You talk to most women, having children isn't about breeding. It's like you can take care of.
You'd be completely shocked to find out how some of Hollywood's kindest, most admired stars have ended up with partners who would later turn their lives into a nightmare. One fled with nothing but 36 cents and a gas station card. Another watched her fairy tale wedding turn into a global punchline in just 72 days. While another stood by a man the world would soon see as a monster. What drove these icons into the arms of people who would break them? The truth exposes the dark and disturbing nature of Hollywood you didn't know about. Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Hollywood is a place where fairy tale romances often make headlines, but not all of them have happy endings. Behind the red carpet smiles and extravagant weddings, some of the most admired celebrities have found themselves in deeply toxic marriages. Sometimes, it's because fame magnifies personal flaws. Other times, one partner hides their darker side until it's too late. When Johnny Depp met Amber Heard on the set of The Rum Diary in 2011, their connection was almost immediate. Depp was already an international superstar known for his charisma and eccentric roles, while Heard was a rising actress with a magnetic presence. By 2012, the pair had gone public with their relationship. And in February 2015, they got married in a private ceremony on Depp's Island in the Bahamas. On the surface, it looked like a romantic success story. But beneath the surface, the marriage was unraveling almost as soon as it began. Just 15 months after saying, "I do," Amber Heard filed for divorce in May 2016, citing irreconcilable differences. Days later, she obtained a temporary restraining order against Depp, claiming he had been maltreating her during their relationship. And just like that, this marked the beginning of one of the most public and polarizing celebrity breakups in modern history. Heard alleged that Depp had mistreated her on multiple occasions, often while intoxicated. She submitted photographs of bruises and videos of his angry outbursts and claimed she had lived in fear throughout the marriage. Depp, on the other hand, denied all accusations and claimed that he was the actual victim in their marriage. His legal team pointed to contradictory statements, alleged inconsistencies in Heard's timeline, and even released audio recordings where Heard admitted to hitting him. By 2018, the public narrative shifted again when Amber Heard published an op-ed in the Washington Post, identifying herself as a survivor of domestic maltreatment. Although she never named Depp, the implication was clear. Depp responded by filing a $50 million defamation lawsuit against her, claiming the article damaged his reputation and career. But Heard countersued for $100 million. The 2022 televised trial became a global media spectacle. For weeks, fans and critics alike watched as text messages, audio recordings, therapy notes, and expert testimonies were revealed. Depp maintained he had never hurt Heard while also admitting to substance abuse and emotional struggles. Heard described in painful detail what she claimed were violent episodes. The court and the world heard two vastly different portrayals of the same relationship. After weeks of testimony, the jury sided largely with Depp. They found that Heard's op-ed was defamatory and awarded Depp $10 million in compensatory damages and $5 million in punitive damages, later reduced to $350,000 due to state limits. Heard was also awarded $2 million in her countersuit. The legal battle ended with a December 2022 settlement, where Heard agreed to pay Depp $1 million. However, in a statement, she said it was not an admission of guilt, but a choice to move forward. In the end, both careers took hits. Depp lost major roles during the height of the scandal, including his spot in the Fantastic Beasts franchise. But Heard had it worse. She faced intense backlash and online harassment that affected her reputation and opportunities. While Depp has begun making public appearances again and starring in European films, Heard has kept a lower profile, relocating to Spain for a time with her daughter. Their relationship was undeniably destructive for both parties, It started with promise and ended with lawsuits, leaked recordings, and global debate. But if you thought Johnny Depp and Amber Heard's story was intense, this next couple's story isn't just scandalous, it turned deadly. O.J. Simpson and Nicole Brown Simpson. O.J. Simpson and Nicole Brown Simpson were one of the most high-profile Hollywood couples of their time. He was a former NFL superstar and actor, charismatic, wealthy, and admired by millions. Nicole was a beautiful young waitress working at a Beverly Hills restaurant when they met in 1977. Despite a 12-year age gap, their chemistry was instant. They began dating, and by 1985, they were married. Outwardly, the Simpsons had a glamorous life. They raised 2 children together, lived in upscale Brentwood, and attended celebrity events side by side. But behind the public image, their marriage was strained and marked by troubling incidents that would later come under intense legal and media scrutiny. In 1992, Nicole filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. However, police records later revealed that over the course of their marriage, law enforcement had been called to their home multiple times due to domestic disputes. Nicole reportedly told friends and family that she feared for her safety and had documented her concerns in a diary. Despite their divorce, the two remained in intermittent contact in the months that followed, sometimes attempting to co-parent, other times growing distant again. However, on June 12, 1994, Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ronald Goldman were found dead just outside her condominium in Los Angeles. Nicole had suffered multiple fatal injuries. The brutal nature of the crime stunned the nation, and within days, attention turned to her ex-husband, O.J. Simpson, especially after he failed to turn himself in. He became the subject of a televised low-speed police chase in a white Ford Bronco, a moment that remains one of the most iconic live broadcasts in American history. Simpson was arrested and charged with both murders. The trial that followed, known simply as the Trial of the Century, captivated viewers worldwide. Broadcast live for months, it became less about guilt or innocence and more about race, fame, police credibility, and media sensationalism. The prosecution presented evidence including DNA, a bloody glove, and past allegations of domestic disputes. The defense, led by the late Johnny Cochran, famously challenged the integrity of the police investigation, coining the phrase, "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit." In October 1995, after a lengthy and highly controversial trial, O.J. Simpson was found not guilty of the murders. The verdict divided the country, but in 1997, a civil court jury found Simpson liable for the wrongful deaths of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman and ordered him to pay $33.5 million in damages to the victims' families. The case brought unprecedented attention to the issue of domestic maltreatment, especially how it's handled when the accused is powerful and beloved. Nicole's tragic death prompted national conversations and reforms, particularly around how police and courts respond to mistreatment allegations. Unfortunately, her name became a symbol of what can happen when warning signs go unheeded. Ike Turner and Tina Turner. Tina Turner met Ike Turner in the late 1950s when she was just a teenager, and he was already an established musician. Their connection began as a musical collaboration, but by the early 1960s, it had transformed into a romantic and professional partnership. Together, they became the Ike and Tina Turner Revue, one of the most electrifying acts in rock and soul music. But behind their on-stage chemistry was a private reality that was anything but glamorous. In 1962, the couple tied the knot in Tijuana, Mexico, and soon after, Tina's life became a cycle of control, violence, and psychological torment. In interviews and her later memoir, Tina described how Ike controlled nearly every aspect of her life, from what she wore to where she went, and even who she spoke to. But the maltreatment wasn't limited to verbal humiliation or emotional manipulation. Tina recounted numerous incidents of physical altercations. Despite her growing fame and undeniable talent, she was trapped in a world where survival meant silence. Ike, meanwhile, was battling his own demons. He struggled with addiction and had a volatile temper. And while Tina endured the maltreatment in silence for years, she eventually found the strength to break free. The turning point came in 1976, after suffering a particularly terrible incident. Before a show in Dallas, Tina fled. With just 36 cents and a mobile gas card in her pocket, she escaped the hotel and never looked back. And that single moment of courage marked the beginning of her journey toward reclaiming her life. Tina later confessed that she walked away from their marriage with nothing. No money, no property, and no rights to the music she helped create, except for her stage name. But that name, Tina Turner, became a symbol of her resilience. She rebuilt her career from the ground up, performing in small venues, struggling financially, and facing an industry that saw her as a has-been. But by the 1980s, she had staged one of the greatest comebacks in music history, which catapulted her back to superstardom. Ike Turner, in later years, admitted to some of Tina's accusations, but often downplayed how serious they were or deflected responsibility. He struggled with addiction, spent time in prison, and eventually died in 2007. Tina Turner, on the other hand, went on to become a legend, not just for her music, but for the life she built after surviving unimaginable pain. Marilyn Monroe and Joe DiMaggio. In 1952, Marilyn Monroe was quickly becoming America's biggest movie star. Joe DiMaggio, on the other hand, had already cemented his place as one of baseball's greatest legends. When they met on a blind date arranged by a friend, it seemed like two worlds, Hollywood and sports, were colliding in the most glamorous way possible. At first, their connection felt genuine. DiMaggio was drawn to Marilyn's beauty and vulnerability, while she admired his strength and reputation as a national hero. But the deeper their relationship went, the more their differences came to the surface. Monroe thrived in the spotlight, becoming more famous with each film, magazine cover, and public appearance. DiMaggio, on the other hand, valued privacy and traditional roles in a relationship. He wanted a wife who would step back from the public eye, and that wasn't who Marilyn was, nor who she wanted to be. They tied the knot on January 14, 1954, in San Francisco, and while fans celebrated the union of two American icons, those closest to them sensed trouble from the start. DiMaggio reportedly disliked Monroe's revealing outfits, her late nights on set, and the way crowds, especially male fans, responded to her. His jealousy wasn't just quiet resentment. It often turned into controlling behavior. According to biographers and close friends, DiMaggio wanted to pull Monroe out of Hollywood entirely and have her live a more domestic life. Tension between them exploded publicly during the filming of The 7-Year Itch. The famous scene where Marilyn's white dress is blown upward over a subway grate drew a massive crowd and media frenzy. DiMaggio, who was present on set, was said to be humiliated and furious, leading to a public argument. That night, Monroe reportedly returned to their hotel room in tears. Several sources and Monroe's own later accounts suggest that their fights were more than verbal, that DiMaggio's anger sometimes led to physical altercation. 9 months after the wedding, Monroe filed for divorce, citing mental cruelty. She held a press conference to announce the separation, her voice trembling as she fought back tears. The fairy tale was over, but the story between them wasn't. In the years that followed, DiMaggio seemed to undergo a quiet transformation. While their romantic relationship had ended, he remained deeply connected to her. He visited her during her hospitalizations, helped her seek treatment during difficult times, and was reportedly planning to propose to her again shortly before her death. When Monroe died in 1962, at just 36 years old, it was DiMaggio who claimed her body. arranged her funeral with the help of her family, and banned Hollywood from attending. He sent roses to her grave several times a week for the next 20 years, never spoke publicly about her in detail, and never remarried. To many, DiMaggio's devotion in death seemed like an apology for what he couldn't be to her in life. Whether out of guilt, love, or both, he never stopped mourning her. Their marriage had been short and painful, and revealed how admiration can easily become possession, and how love, even when genuine, can be suffocated by control. Madonna and Shaun Penn. Madonna and Shaun Penn met in 1985, and the attraction was instant. In fact, just months later, they tied the knot on Madonna's 27th birthday in a highly publicized wedding in Malibu, complete with helicopters circling overhead and paparazzi swarming the beach. To the public, it seemed like a passionate union of two larger-than-life figures living at full volume. But behind the media spectacle was a relationship plagued by emotional volatility, frequent arguments, and troubling allegations. Shaun Penn's reputation for having a short fuse wasn't limited to his professional life. In fact, during his marriage to Madonna, he was arrested multiple times, including for assaulting a photographer. There were also growing reports that his jealousy extended beyond the press to Madonna herself. Friends and industry insiders described an increasingly tense dynamic, fueled by Penn's discomfort with Madonna's bold style and growing fame. The most disturbing claim surfaced in 1987 when rumors alleged that Penn tied Madonna to a chair for several hours at their Malibu home. Law enforcement records actually revealed that Madonna filed a police report following an incident that December. However, she later withdrew the complaint, and no charges were pursued. Years later, long after their marriage had ended, Madonna released a public statement denying the more extreme allegations against Penn, specifically the hostage story. However, she acknowledged that the relationship had been toxic and destructive. The couple's ups and downs became tabloid fodder, but those closest to them said it wasn't just tabloid drama. It was real dysfunction. Their arguments were loud, sometimes public, and always fueled by Penn's impulsiveness and Madonna's refusal to be controlled. She was pushing boundaries in her music, in her image, and in her career. He, meanwhile, was uncomfortable with how visible their private life had become. By 1989, after 4 years of turmoil, Madonna filed for divorce. This time, it was final. The marriage was over, and both moved on to different phases of their careers and very different types of relationships. In the years that followed, their story evolved. Despite their painful past, Madonna and Penn slowly rebuilt a friendship. She publicly praised him on occasion, calling him the love of her life at a charity gala in 2016. But no amount of friendly gestures in later years could erase the reality of what happened during those 4 chaotic years, and to date, their marriage stands as one of the most infamous Hollywood unions, marked by control, emotional instability, and a struggle for power that left both of them deeply scarred. Sandra Bullock and Jesse James. It was an unexpected match. Sandra Bullock, America's girl next door, known for her warmth, wit, and grounded personality, fell for Jesse James, the tattooed custom motorcycle builder with a rebellious streak. They met in 2003 when Sandra arranged a visit for her godson to the set of Monster Garage, James's Discovery Channel show. The connection was instant, and by 2005, the two were married. For a while, it looked like a storybook second chance. Sandra embraced James's 3 children from previous relationships and was often praised for her hands-on, motherly presence in their lives. Behind the scenes, she was reportedly devoted, helping to stabilize James's world and even crediting the marriage for helping her find a sense of family and purpose beyond Hollywood. However, the turning point came in 2010, just days after Sandra won the Academy Award for Best Actress for her role in The Blind Side. While the world was celebrating her triumph, tabloid headlines began to tell a much darker story. Several women came forward claiming to have had affairs with James during his marriage to Sandra. The number of alleged infidelities quickly grew, and the details were humiliatingly public. One of the women was photographed wearing white supremacist-style imagery, which cast an even darker shadow over the scandal. Though James later denied being affiliated with any hate groups, the photos and associations were damaging, not just to his reputation, but to Sandra, who had built her public image on integrity, compassion, and a quiet personal life away from drama. The media firestorm was relentless. Sandra, blindsided by the revelations, immediately withdrew from the spotlight, and within weeks she filed for divorce. In her public statement, she confirmed what many had already suspected. The marriage was over, and her focus had shifted entirely to her new role as a mother. What many didn't know at the time was that Sandra had quietly begun the process of adopting a baby boy from New Orleans. Though she and James had started the journey together, she made the decision to finalize the adoption as a single parent. In April 2010, just a month after the cheating scandal broke, Sandra introduced her son, Louis, to the world. James eventually admitted to cheating and expressed regret in various interviews. He remarried and later divorced again, continuing to make headlines for reasons far removed from his once celebrated TV career. But this next couple on the list had a wedding that broke the internet. But the marriage barely lasted 72 days. Kim Kardashian and Kris Humphries. In 2011, Kim Kardashian was at the height of her fame. With her family's reality show Keeping Up with the Kardashians dominating pop culture, and her brand expanding by the day, nearly everything about her life was under public scrutiny. So when she began dating NBA player Kris Humphries, the relationship quickly became front-page news. Within 6 months, they were engaged, and just 3 months after that, they were married. The wedding was a spectacle, an estimated $10 million affair filmed for a 2-part television special and attended by hundreds of celebrity guests. The ceremony was lavish, the ratings were massive, and the couple looked happy. But behind the glamour, cracks were already beginning to show. To everyone's surprise, the marriage lasted just 72 days. Almost immediately after the wedding, rumors began circulating that things weren't as perfect as they seemed. The couple reportedly argued over fame, priorities, and how to live their lives. Humphries, known for being more private, struggled with the constant cameras, the high-pressure schedule, and the intense spotlight that came with being part of the Kardashian brand. Kim, meanwhile, was juggling a booming career, a demanding family business, and rising expectations from the public. In October 2011, Kim filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. The announcement sparked a media firestorm. Critics accused her of staging the marriage for television ratings and business deals, while supporters argued that she simply made a mistake in a high-pressure environment. Humphries took the backlash seriously. He refused to grant a quick divorce and instead sought an annulment, claiming the entire marriage was fraudulent. The legal battle dragged on for nearly 2 years. During that time, both sides aired frustrations. Humphries said he felt used and humiliated, while Kim maintained that the relationship had been real, but that she had ignored her instincts and rushed into something she wasn't ready for. She later admitted, in an interview, that she had experienced intense anxiety in the days leading up to the wedding, but felt too overwhelmed to call it off. Eventually, the divorce was finalized into 2013, just before the birth of Kardashian's first child with Kanye West. In the years that followed, both parties moved on with their lives, but the shadow of the 72-day marriage remained a key chapter in Kim Kardashian's public narrative. Kim has since spoken with more honesty about the experience admitting that the relationship should never have moved so quickly and that she felt immense pressure to keep up appearances for the cameras, the fans, and her own brand. It was, in her own words, a lesson in listening to herself before the world. Kris Humphries has largely retreated from the limelight, retiring from the NBA and expressing frustration at how the situation painted him. He described feeling mistreated by the attention and admitted it took years to shake off the public perception of being the man in the fake wedding. Courtney Love and Kurt Cobain. When Courtney Love and Kurt Cobain met in 1990, they were two rising forces on the edge of a cultural explosion. Cobain had just released Bleach with Nirvana, and Love's band Hole was building its own underground reputation. Their connection was immediate and intense. Both were known for rejecting conventional fame and embracing emotional honesty, but neither was prepared for the storm their relationship would become. They married in 1992 on a beach in Hawaii. Love wore a lace dress once owned by actress Frances Farmer, while Cobain, dressed in pajamas, looked more dazed than delighted in photos. She was already pregnant with their daughter, Frances Bean Cobain, and Nirvana's second album, Nevermind, had just made Cobain one of the most famous musicians in the world. The timing was both surreal and overwhelming. But behind their rebellious image was a relationship deeply troubled by addiction. Both Love and Cobain struggled with substance use, and while they insisted at times that they were trying to quit, their addictions became an unignorable part of their lives. The media quickly latched on. Tabloid headlines accused them of being reckless parents. The couple was investigated by Child Protective Services shortly after Frances was born, prompting a bitter legal and emotional battle to keep custody. As the pressures of fame intensified, so did the turmoil at home. Cobain was never comfortable in the spotlight and spoke often about feeling like a misfit in a world that wanted to idolize him. Rehab stints came and went. So did public outbursts, erratic behavior, and worsening mental health. Love was often portrayed as the destructive force in the relationship, but those close to them later painted a more complicated picture of two people in love, but also deeply unwell, feeding off each other's instability. In March 1994, Cobain took a drastic decision in Rome after overdosing on champagne and some substances. Although he briefly entered rehab, just weeks later, on April 5, 1994, Kurt Cobain passed away under tragic circumstances at the age of 27. His body was found 3 days later at his home in Seattle, leaving behind a note filled with love for his family and despair over his life. Courtney Love was vilified in the aftermath. Some blamed her. Others speculated endlessly about what really happened. Through it all, she grieved in public, and at a vigil in Seattle, she read parts of Cobain's final note aloud to fans. She returned to her music, releasing a song just days after his death, and dedicating it in part to him. The album became both a critical success and a raw expression of loss and rage. Their daughter, Frances Bean, was barely 20 months old when Cobain died. She was raised largely outside of the public eye and has spoken openly about growing up in the shadow of her father's legend and her mother's chaos. Elizabeth Taylor and Eddie Fisher. In the late 1950s, Elizabeth Taylor was already one of Hollywood's most luminous stars, while Eddie Fisher was a chart-topping singer, adored by the public and married to America's sweetheart, actress Debbie Reynolds. Eddie and Debbie were close friends with Taylor and her husband, film producer Mike Todd, and both couples were often photographed together. Unfortunately, in 1958, Mike Todd died suddenly in a plane crash. Devastated and in mourning, she leaned on those closest to her for support, including Eddie Fisher. Their friendship deepened in Todd's absence, and it didn't take long before the relationship turned romantic. There was just one problem. Fiser was still married to Reynolds. When the affair became public, the backlash was immediate and intense. Reynolds and Fiser were considered the golden couple, and Taylor's relationship with him shattered that image overnight, and the tabloids labeled her a homewrecker. In 1959, Fiser officially divorced Reynolds and married Taylor just hours later in a quiet Las Vegas ceremony. But what started as a relationship built on passion and grief quickly soured under the weight of public pressure and personal instability. Taylor, though deeply emotional and often driven by intense connections, later admitted she married Fiser out of loneliness rather than love. Their marriage never found solid ground. Fiser's singing career began to fade, while Taylor's star only rose higher. She took on more dramatic roles, won critical acclaim, and eventually earned an Academy Award. Fiser, meanwhile, struggled to stay relevant in a rapidly changing entertainment landscape. There were deeper problems, too. Infidelity plagued the marriage, with Taylor rumored to be unfaithful, and Fiser reportedly turning to alcohol as tensions increased. Friends and insiders described a union strained by resentment, where Fiser couldn't keep up with his wife's fame, and Taylor couldn't overlook his growing bitterness. By 1964, the marriage was over. Taylor filed for divorce and didn't waste time looking back. That same year, while filming Cleopatra, she fell in love with her co-star, Richard Burton. The new romance caused even more public uproar, because Burton was married at the time, but this time, Taylor didn't care. She followed her heart, and her whirlwind relationship with Burton would go on to define the next chapter of her life. Eddie Fisher's career never fully recovered, though he continued to perform and write memoirs reflecting on his life. He remained more known for his tabloid headlines than his musical legacy. He admitted later that leaving Reynolds for Taylor had cost him more than he ever expected, professionally and personally. Elizabeth Taylor would go on to marry 8 times, famously saying she was just a girl who was looking for love. However, her marriage to Fiser remains one of the most scandalous in Hollywood history. Which of the names on this list surprised you the most? Drop your answers in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.